Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Thoughts on Education. And we are very honored and privileged to have us with us today, Mr. Chiraag Mehta, who's the Associate Director of Indian School of Business and Finance. So, if I can, the thing is, when I do these things, there are people I interview, and they have long list of achievements. So it'll take a little bit of time when I go through this list of achievements. So, Mr. Chiraag Mehta obtained his bachelor's degree in economics at St. Stephen's College, University of Delhi, following which he completed a master's degree in economics at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Thereafter, he worked as an investment banker for 2 years with HSBC before returning to India and taking up a career in the education sector. He has also worked as a consultant with the education team of the World Bank in New Delhi. He's a passionate educationist and has taught various courses in economics to several batches at ISBF. He's also been very actively associated with student outreach initiatives in the past, conducting several sessions in the school, colleges across the country. As an associate director, he currently looks after all dimensions of student welfare, development, and learning at Indian School of Business and Finance. Very warm welcome to you, sir, to this interview.
Thank you so much, Indranil. Thank you. When you said that, you introduce your guests and there's a long list of achievements, I was going to say that, we can all be thankful that mine is a pretty short one at the moment. So, but thank you for that kind introduction anyway. Thank you.
I fumbled. It's still long enough to make me fumble. So, no, I want to know that, coming from such versatile places and then, having this long tenure in education, why do you think that, or rather, what makes you think that education industry is the best place to work in?
That's a very good question, Indranil. To be completely honest, let me first say it would be hypocritical of me to not say that it was not a very considered decision on my part to come into education. So, John Lennon in one of his songs wrote that life is what happens to you while you're making plans. So for me, education was a little bit like that because as you mentioned, as part of the plan, I worked in investment banking and then kind of worked with World Bank as a consultant. Also tried my hand at the civil services at one point. The civil services exam, I must add. But I kind of then took up education to fill in a gap, in my life at that stage. It was something that worked for me was meant to work for me for a short period of time. But the thing is that I fell in love with it. The moment I stepped into the classroom, I had never imagined myself as a teacher. And I think that perhaps helped manage my expectations. I wasn't expecting the moon as kids do, with careers. My dream career was advertising. That dream was shattered when I took up my first job. For a few months, I realized the real world of advertising is very different. So I think you create these illusions based on the ideal version of a job in your head, which I hadn't done coincidentally for teaching. So I'm not saying that it's an expectation that can only, or it's a profession that can only work if your expectations are low. Absolutely not. It's a wonderful, wonderful profession because I think the thing that makes me tick in education is the instant gratification. I am not somebody who can, wait for a very long time to see the output of his or her work. In a classroom, from the students' body language, whether you have been able to get something across to them or not. So there is that instant gratification, instant satisfaction that, oh my God, I've been able to explain this clearly to somebody. And it's a huge responsibility the way we see teaching at ISBF, and that is what has kept me at ISBF for many years, is because it brings an international education to India. So we take a very deliberate and a very conscious approach to teaching and learning. So, it dawned on me pretty much after my first couple of lectures, because of the culture here, that, everything that these, 30, 35 odd students in my class are going to know about this particular topic or subject even is going to come from me. And that's a huge responsibility. And one that, you cannot fail. As a student, you often, skip chapters, you try and prepare to the examination. As a teacher, you've got to be able to, know everything 100% and prepare accordingly. And you will still not know 100%. Because some student will ask you a question that will open new doors even for you. So it's a combination of all these things that has kept me in higher education. Of course, as you spend more and more time here, you realize the very direct impact you're making, or the direct, not impact is a strong word, the direct contribution you're making to human capital formation, for the economy, which currently with India poised for a demographic dividend is a very, very vital contribution, in our opinions. So it's a combination of these. It's always been considered a very noble profession. It's noble because of the human capital formation angle, so and because of the satisfaction that guiding people gives you. So nothing out of the ordinary. The usual sort of traits of the teaching profession I found work really well for me. They align with what keeps me going.
I mean, a lot of people are involved in different ways in the education industry. For you, it has been somewhat where you have inspired and led, a lot of people into achieving their dreams and everything. I feel that ISBF. Let if we can come to ISBF as a college, ISBF being among only few of those colleges offering such out of league courses with specialized international curriculum as well. So if you can just give us a little idea about more idea about the colleges and the courses offered.
Yeah, absolutely. So just for some context there, Indranil, we ISBF has from inception since 2006 been focused really on bringing international world-class education to India. That is the mandate or the vision of ISBF, and it arises from the background of our founder, who is himself a Warwick University graduate in economics and finance. He studied briefly at the LSE for a summer school, and then did a PhD in finance at University of Delhi here in India. And he could see the immense value add, the immense additional value add that an international education gives one. The kind of application-oriented training, you're always studying updated curricula, you're always being trained to solve real problems out there in the real world. Higher education in top institutions globally, this may seem like an ironic thing to say, but is not an end in itself. They don't teach so that you can score well, or so that you know the theory well. Every good reputed institution in the world tries to create problem solvers who can do that in the real world, who have the theoretical foundation, the roots, and the ability to apply what they learn in completely new contexts. And the roots, that foundation gives them that ability. So this is a little bit of background which hopefully says a lot about the kind of education that ISBF stands for. To come to sort of slightly more specific things, since our inception in 2006, we've had the very good fortune to collaborate with arguably the most eminent, or some of the most eminent names in the subjects that we teach. We're broadly an economics, management, business, finance, and accounting school. We broadly just call it EMF, economics, management, and finance. And for these three areas, the London School of Economics and Political Science, which we've collaborated with since 2006, is ranked among the top 10 in the world for each of these areas. And now, why am I discussing LSE's rankings when we're talking about ISBF? The simple reason is that the structure of the programs that we offer with LSE and University of London taken together. So the three institutions come together to offer these programs. This is one of the deepest kinds of international collaborations that exist, certainly in India. With my 8 years of experience in higher education, I can say that for sure, but arguably in the world also. And why is that? Because of three essential ingredients. The first is that an ISBF student studies exactly the same curriculum that an LSE student studies. And that is why I brought up the fact that this is a top 10 curriculum. So you're studying a global top 10 curriculum here in India. The second is that you are held to the exact same assessment standards. So every single assessment that counts towards your degree or transcript is set by an LSE academic. It is conducted externally through the British Council to preserve the integrity of the process. And all the answer scripts go straight back to LSE for correction. And they apply the same process, the same personnel, the same standards as they would for somebody studying on campus in London. Right? So there is no dilution of standards. Oh, you're studying in New Delhi. Oh, you're studying in Nairobi. Let me make things a little bit easier for you. No. Because that would mean that the eventual quality that the degree award would stand for would be different for an internal LSE student and an LSE international student, which LSE, being a 125 plus year old institution with a massive reputation, cannot afford. It cannot create two different perceptions of what an LSE graduate stands for, right? Which is why it has these two salient features: the same curriculum and the same assessment standards, no dilution. Which is why coming to the third point, the program culminates in the University of London degree award, and the degree actually mentions LSE as the academic body, making it equivalent to an LSE degree, and therefore worth its weight in gold globally and for life, because everybody understands the value of an LSE education and a University of London degree award. So that is what we endeavor to bring to students. We have done that successfully for 15 odd years now, coming up on 15 years really. And this is what we managed to do, is bring it at 1/4 the cost of doing it in London. So it's a huge cost saving. It opens up a whole new market in terms of access or let me put it another way, it opens up LSE to a whole new market. So a market that could not afford to go and access LSE in London can now afford it because it's 1/4 the cost. It may still be expensive by Indian terms, but you're looking at a global top 10 education being obtained at 1/4 the cost of doing it in London. And the final point I'd like to make here is that today ISBF is recognized by LSE as one of its top 5 teaching institutions or colleges in the world. And ISBF plays the role of a college in this ecosystem, in this 3-institution ecosystem. And LSE on its own website, of its own accord, recognizes ISBF as one of its 5 featured teaching institutions, which is nothing but LSE telling the world that if you want to study our curriculum outside of London, these are among the 5 top places to do it at. And the reason we are there is because our students have, with the kind of support they're able to receive at ISBF, have done exceedingly well on the programs in terms of learning outcomes, the career achievements you mentioned earlier. They've gone on to do wonderful things year after year after year. So that is what we bring to the Indian higher education sector, an undiluted LSE education where you graduate with a University of London degree. I'd quickly add here that I've mostly focused on the undergraduate programs we offer. We also offer a 1-year postgraduate diploma. Again, the same structure, LSE, University of London, except that the eventual award is a diploma. This is a 1-year program. You must have completed an undergrad to undertake it. And this is in economics, management, finance, and data science. So 4 clear disciplines. Our undergraduate programs, on the other hand, are a mix and match. So I mentioned 3 fields, but the specific programs are 5: economics, economics with finance, economics with management, business with management, and accounting with finance. And then one final thing to report here is a recent collaboration with Kingston University, where we're also offering a Bachelor of Business Management program with them, where the student guarantees or is guaranteed to study abroad in the 3rd year. So that's for another segment, which is completely clear that they must study abroad for some time during their undergrad. So it brings down the cost of the whole program to less than half, because the first 2 years are in India, but it's the same curriculum, the same degree award, 3rd year at Kingston University, London, and you graduate in London. So that's the college and the courses in London.
And the moment you actually mentioned LSE, I actually formed the next question in my head, like
right.
kind of a reporter kind of thing. So I was about to ask you, like, with the academic direction supervision from London School of Economics, how does the curriculum ensure the best practice in the industry? And I believe in our previous interaction, the previous questions interaction itself, we have covered most of the bases, and LSE, to be really honest, with the starting of this new education policies and making things localized and everything, and a lot of students, as I know, going outside is a big hassle and everything, and getting that same education in Indian soil is something which would give us an edge in the industry. And that is something that I believe that students who are watching this can take away, that how crucial ISBF's role is to Indian education, Indian higher education, and with the new era which is coming, and they're the pioneers in leading this from a very long time. So it is something that I feel that it adds to the society so much, and it adds to our outreach as well to the external, to the international market and everything. So that is what it is. And if there is any more point that you want to stress on this entire collaboration, and also anything that would ensure the best practice, it's there.
Yeah, so that's a very important one, Indranil, and the curriculum as well as the college have a role to play here. So you're absolutely right that the curriculum actually does half the work in our case. It is so compared with LSE's global top 10 rank. I mean, I'm myself a graduate of University of Delhi, which is considered one of the better universities in the country. But unfortunately, and it's great to see the government's emphasis on domestic institutions, growing them, the newfound emphasis. But at the moment, the highest ranked sort of curricula in India in these fields are below the 100 mark, typically, for economics, management, or finance. So there's a vast gulf. And one of the key features, or the two key features of that gulf, are cutting edge and application oriented. And I've already kind of spoken about those. The fact that the curriculum is written by LSE means that the world's best researchers, research minds are writing and updating that curriculum year after year. So the students are always studying something that reflects the latest knowledge, which is hugely important because industry is always working on the latest knowledge anyway. Industry is never obsolete, or the market wipes them out, right? As far as application oriented, I've already stressed that a top college always emphasizes on training its learners to solve real problems. Now, having taught economics at ISBF for 8 years, I could pull up, I won't do it because this is an interview, but I could pull up a first year economics question paper of an LSE exam. The questions look like they are out of newspaper articles. Because that is the conversation your boss will have with you out there in the real world. No, they're not going to come to you and say, oh, this is the problem. Now, step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. If they had to dictate the steps, they may as well do it themselves, right? That ability to apply, and I've seen, with the brightest of students, no matter how you measure them, these are students who've gone on for a master's to LSE, Harvard, etc. eventually. When I taught them a concept, they would understand fully, and then I would test them that, can you answer this question or that question, and I would be satisfied that this kid has understood the concept fully, and then I would throw them an LSE exam question. This is early in the year, first couple of months of the year, and they would just sit there. They wouldn't even bother to pick up their pen because they didn't have the first clue how to go about it. Not because it's hard, but because nobody had trained them, or at least, I was teaching them. So in that case, until that point, I hadn't trained them to apply that concept. I'd only trained them in the concept, which is very different from training them to apply the concept. And that takes almost as much time as the concept itself. So it's double the effort for the same curriculum. And that is the kind of teaching intensity and learning intensity that we and our learners have to bring to the table to make the most of this curriculum. But the beauty is, once you understand it, you can have a policy conversation with a first year LSE student. So that is the kind of training they go through, which makes them very industry ready and industry relevant. We've heard from many of our recruiters, that, and there's a lot of other things I will quickly point out. It's not just the curriculum that prepares them for this, because there is still a little bit of sort of hands-on, shaping and honing that one has to do. But the end result is, we've heard from many of our recruiters that, our students are outperforming graduates of master's programs from other eminent Indian institutions, including some top-ranked ones. And that is simply because another factor. Now, coming to the role of the college, I mentioned the curriculum and the college have a part to play. The curricular part is taken care of by LSE. The college is what ISBF brings. One of the key features, and I'm going to talk about 3 aspects here: academic, co-curricular, and extracurricular. Academically, I think one of our biggest contributions to students is industry readiness, is by getting them deeply entrenched into the spirit of asking questions. Now, I don't know if you'll agree with me, but at least I went through most of my schooling and college thinking like I was the bright student if I did not ask questions, because I thought that I was signaling to the teacher that I understood everything. But, all of us know that is not true all the time, right? Most of the time, you're just kidding yourself into believing you've understood everything because you want to project a good image, right? And also because our questions were often treated cynically and we were not given answers very, in a very sort of, for want of a better word, in a very nice way. So at ISBF, and honestly, this is again DNA that we derive from LSE. LSE's motto is rerum cognoscere causas, which is to understand the causes of things. You don't understand the cause of anything without asking questions. Think about, in one's academic pursuit, questions are so important that a PhD student spends 3 to 6 years researching on just one question, narrowing down on one question, first spending about a year identifying that question, and then spending another 2 to 5 years researching on one question. That is the centrality of questions in academic pursuit, in all pursuit really, and we play it down. But the LSE curriculum doesn't allow us to do that, because as I mentioned earlier, if I haven't asked questions, my base is not deep enough to apply, and if I can't apply, I can't pass the LSE exam. Now, speaking of industry specifically, you mentioned in my introduction that I worked as an investment banker. In my first half-yearly review, one of the pieces of feedback I got, my review was just above average, and one of the pieces of feedback I got was, you asked too few questions. And I was a little taken aback that this is a very pedantic kind of feedback. Why should I ask questions? This is work. I'm getting your work done. Why do you care? But then I thought about it, and I was given some additional context that, this seems to be a common problem among the Asian cohort of students. That I don't know what it is. My manager was telling me, I don't know what it is. You guys seem to have this undue reverence, or you make this, godly figure out of your manager, and, out of reverence or respect or fear, don't ask questions. And when I reflected, I found that his observation was very true. And to the extent that when I recalled, I remembered that I had not even asked for the deadlines for many tasks when they were assigned to me. I just assumed in my head कि अगर boss ने deadline नहीं बताया तो हो सकता है deadline important ना हो. It didn't cross my mind कि boss हो सकता है भूल गया हो बताना. So whereas an ISBF student is, we empower them, we enable them to ask questions so that they bring that same spirit to the world of work. And I cannot tell you how much employers appreciate that, because they don't want people who will just quietly do their work. They want people who can discuss, debate, add value, and get work done in collaboration, rather than just take a set of instructions, sit by yourself, do it, produce the wrong output, then keep going back and forth, right? So that is why this spirit of questioning adds a lot of value from an industry readiness perspective. Aside from that, there is a lot of exposure that they get on the co-curricular and extracurricular fronts. On the co-curricular front, we have a very strong public lecture series. We've had people like Joy Bhattacharya, co-owner of KKR, Mr. Nikhil Arora, Vice President of GoDaddy, Mr. Deep Kalra, founder and CEO of Make My Trip, Dr. Ashok Lahiri, 15th Finance Commission member, Dr. Pranab Sen, first Chief Statistician of India, Dr. Abhijit Sen, former Chief Economic Advisor. These are guests only in the last 10 months that I'm talking about. So if students every month are getting exposed to people like this, it really broadens their horizons and allows them to think laterally, etc. So that is another very important aspect. They go through a lot of software training as well. So they learn R, Python, Stata, Excel. They also go through a lot of upskilling. So they go through how to some mock interviews, aptitude tests, group discussions, how to make a good CV, how to make a good LinkedIn profile, digital networking. These are all things that they are put through. And then, of course, there is a dedicated careers team which facilitates internships and placements. And it is a combination of all of these things, we think, that makes them industry ready and gets us the kind of feedback that I mentioned earlier on.
So the thing is, we are talking a lot about ISBF as a college, and to be really honest, with this entire conversation, I kind of have a feeling that it gives a lot of clarity in terms of deciding and knowing, what we should be doing, and that is what we want in the Indian education sector. But at the same time, as I said, we are honored and privileged to have you. So we would want to know a little more about you, playing your role at ISBF. So being the associate director for the college, how do you strategize about the key programs and plan for the administration of the college? And also, what were the major challenges faced during the pandemic, and how have you planned to cope up with it?
That's a very interesting question. The first one is, it's one just goes about one's work. It's very rare that you sit down and reflect on your style or approach but and that's why it's a very interesting question. If I think about it, how do we plan and strategize for our courses? If you mean new courses, then it is largely based on the feedback that we get over 2 or 3 admission cycles from prospective students. If we get a lot of inquiries, say about data science or business analytics, which had happened in the 2-3 years leading up to the launch of our graduate diploma in data science, we were one of the first people off the block in the Indian context to offer a data science program, and especially a full year, one year full-time kind of program, which many others have now started offering. So it's by watching the sort of market trends, and that's the sensible way, at least in our understanding of launching any new course or implementing any new strategy. Similarly, the Kingston collaboration has come from a place where a number of our students have told us, while a number of students are very happy to take on the LSE curriculum, which and one thing I haven't said, might come up in one of your later questions, I don't know, is that the LSE curriculum, while it is pursued by default in India for 3 years, which is what brings the cost down substantially, there are many opportunities to actually go to LSE for anything between 3 weeks and 2 years. I won't dwell on those. Perhaps we can come back to those, but it is that market research, in a sense, that has led us to launch the Kingston University collaboration, because some students made it known to us that we want some part of our degree to, agreed it's an international education, it's an international degree, we want some part of it to necessarily be abroad, and that is what Kingston University brings to the table. Sorry, I've got something on. So that is why we offered that program. So it's largely responding to feedback, keeping a close eye on the ground, close ear to the ground really, and picking up that feedback and trying to strategize accordingly. In terms of how we run our existing courses and how one kind of works in the organization, I think the golden word there is collaboration. There is nothing one can do without collaboration and good processes. I think that's one thing you learn by working with institutions like University of London and LSE. They nudge you in the direction of lots of processes, not least because you have to file a lot of things for our annual audits, etc. They will look at everything from student experience, student feedback, faculty, staffing, administration, infrastructure. All of these we have to document in order to convince them that we are doing a good job of delivering their programs. And when I say a process, process could be a very simple thing. Minuting a meeting is a process, as opposed to leaving it to everybody's memory, right? Now with video calls, minuting it in such a way, if I open a Google Doc on a meeting, share my screen during a meeting and type the minutes there, then what am I doing? I'm not only creating minutes, I'm getting everybody to instantaneously review and approve the minutes. So I don't have to circulate it later and say, hey, do you approve this? Which becomes a day-long process. Everybody in the meeting is reviewing it instantaneously, and then I just hit send at the end of the meeting. So that is a process, as opposed to, that is a better process than writing it and then circulating it for inputs. So that process-driven thing automatically requires collaboration, right? No process is the other end of the spectrum from person, as far as running an organization goes, in my understanding. If you make it people-centric, it becomes very, very susceptible to attrition. One person leaves, there's mayhem. Processes are people neutral. It's something I also learned very early on, thankfully, in my stint as an investment banker, that nothing should be dependent on anybody, no matter even if that person is the CEO. It should be person neutral, ideally, and that is how we like to run things at ISBF to the greatest extent possible. We've not perfected this, but we come together, work in teams, and rely on our processes to do a good job. Coming to the second part of your question, Indranil, the challenges thrown up by the pandemic. That's a question that almost asks itself in this time, doesn't it? And how we've dealt with it. So, the challenges, I think, are reasonably well known. I mean, in the first instance, it was how do you react? How do you take classes online? How do you take examinations online? That was our first challenge. I remember that 21st, 22nd March, I think, was when the lockdown was announced, and within a week of that, we had to pull off our final exams, which are very important to prepare students for the LSE examinations, which are conducted externally, right? So we had a final formative exam, and that is typically held, in a classroom invigilated format. So we were, because of our years of pedagogical training by LSE and University of London, we were able to take that online almost overnight. We issued a set of instructions to students, a set of instructions to faculty members, invigilated via the webcam, and were able to conduct it quite smoothly within a week. And that kind of set the tone. Everybody was kind of bringing their respective innovations to the discussions. Faculty members are using Zoom, Google Classroom for discussion forums, lots of features within Zoom. We have a very interesting gamified workshop that we actually conduct both at ISBF and for high school students, also called Playnomics 2.0, which is where we actually conduct a group game online. And we've got very strong feedback on it, and we use the breakout feature on Zoom, breakout rooms feature on Zoom to facilitate that. But Google Classroom, Kahoots and other sorts of polling software, using digital pads to make graphs and equations, etc. So a lot of brainstorming and thinking has helped us. Again, the collaborative spirit has really helped us get past the challenges thrown by the pandemic. The challenges, we're also conscious of some very important challenges like screen fatigue and student engagement in the online world, because we are being forced to teach online at the moment because educational institutions are not allowed to open up. So for student engagement, we've taken lots of different measures within the classroom. We are trying flipped lectures where we teach the concept through a video, which we ask students to go through before the class, and then during the class, it's only discussion. So our classes are very discussion, interaction, question heavy. And of course, I mentioned, polling and all sorts of other features, digital pads to illustrate things. Some students have also been advised to, buy digital pads so they can have their work reviewed easily. All of these things have gone into solving the student engagement problem. Of course, we are still learning as we go along. And the screen fatigue issue is another one where we are trying to space out our classes a little bit, give them a half an hour break after every 2-hour block of lectures. Faculty members are also conscious. They try and every now and then do a lecture where they allow students to turn off their video feed, and it's a discussion only, audio only lecture. So that gives them a bit of a break from the screen fatigue. So those are some of the common challenges and how we are dealing with them. But it's work in progress, to be honest.
It is something that 2020 brings along with all these challenges, and it is always something which gives us a little more push and all to see all these institutions and colleges leading the way in terms of adapting to this new change and this pandemic that has happened. But
the word push is very important. In fact, I was going to say that what this kind of once in a generation event does. I mean, of course, coronavirus is once in many generations, but what it does is it kind of takes you and shakes you a little bit, and it forces you to change your worldview. So we've also found that we are finding this is proving more an opportunity rather than a challenge, because a lot of those things, pedagogical things, while I would say ISBF is among quite at the sort of frontier or cutting edge of pedagogy also because of our collaborations really. Yet there are those things always where because of inertia, you want to take them up, but you just haven't kind of taken the plunge, such as flipped classrooms. LSE has been doing it for a few years. They've suggested it to us. We had not committed to the idea, but now the whole management department is practically committed to it fully. So the pandemic has forced us to take it up, and it's a net benefit. So we're finding in many ways it's actually an opportunity as much as it is a challenge, the pandemic.
Yeah, you have mentioned on that, like in terms of even the minutes of the meeting, right? Yeah. It's right in real time, and it is something where we have adapted to a better means of doing things.
Correct.
And it's somewhere or the other, institutions like ISBF makes us look forward to the change, right?
Well, I would hope so.
So let's kind of get into a little factual questions, right? Because our viewers would want to know some facts and everything, because they are going to go into ISBF, they would want to come out with something. So let's make it a little more factual and very direct. My questions would be very direct. This question would be very direct. So, what are the best career options available for the students graduating from ISBF? Yeah. And also, what is the placement statistics of your college? And also, there's the last part of the placement question. till date, what has been your average package and the highest package offered to the students?
Right. Okay. Excellent question. I think it's best to talk facts. You're absolutely right. Students deserve that, and we're actually an organization which, again, pushed by LSE and UL. We try and keep our information, our counseling very, very transparent, and we try and make us as available to the students as possible. So three parts of the question: career paths, placement statistics, and what was the last one? Sorry.
Highest and lower, highest and average package. Highest and average package.
Okay. So to answer it in that same order, career paths, actually, there are some very, very unique opportunities that students get on account of the structure of the programs as I described them before. And like I said, you could spend 3 weeks to 2 years abroad as part of this program. So because ISBF, I mentioned, is one of the leading teaching institutions in this ecosystem, LSE has given us 2 standing summer school scholarships every year. So ISBF selects 2 students on whatever criteria we deem fit. Of course, we have a fixed criteria, but LSE doesn't get into it, is what I'm trying to say, because they are very happy with the kind of students ISBF sends them. So they've basically given us 2 seats on their summer school. They fully pay for those students. Students go for 3 weeks. LSE is the second largest and one of the most reputed summer schools in the world. And they go and they can pick any program of their choice for those 3 weeks. Could be economics, management, finance, business, accounting, government, policy, international relations, anything LSE is offering, really. So that's a wonderful opportunity. Students are also able to transfer not just to LSE, but to practically any eminent college in the world that is accepting transfers in a particular year. Now, what is a transfer? It means you do year 1 at ISBF and then year 2 and 3 at the foreign college. Just as a quick statistic, LSE, for example, and using LSE as a proxy for top colleges in the world, in 2018, LSE had 80 undergraduate students from India, 77 of which were from an international board background. So either IB or A level. Only 3 students from ISE, CBSE or the state boards, where 95+% of our students graduate. So because there was a mismatch between the training that Indian boards were giving students and the kind of training needed to pursue an LSE program. That is where the transfer becomes a wonderful opportunity, because if you don't get into LSE straight after school, you could get in 1 year down the line because of the kind of pedigree you have been brought into at ISBF. Now, to give you specific numbers there, Indranil, we have, LSE tells us that they have not accepted as many transfers in the last 6 to 7 years from any institution globally as many as they have from ISBF, which tells us that ISBF is easily the best platform for a foreign transfer in India, arguably even in the world, based on what LSE tells us. That might be extrapolating a bit too far, but certainly in India, we've had 14 transfer offers from LSE alone in the last 6 years. In addition, students have gone to colleges like University of British Columbia in Canada, which is Canada's top-ranked university, Carnegie Mellon in the US, Hong Kong University, which is a top 25 university, King's College London, St. Andrews, Bristol, Bath, Edinburgh, all top 100 universities in the world. So that is a very unique opportunity, and the opportunity is available because first year of an LSE program prepares you for second year anywhere in the world. And that is why I went to St. Stephen's College for my undergrad, as you said, and again, St. Stephen's College, Delhi University, economics is considered a good combination in India. DU is considered one of the better colleges for economics honors. If me or even my roommate or classmate who was our batch topper, if we had applied for a transfer, our application would have found its way, honestly, to the garbage bin. Because, the first year of even the top curriculum in India doesn't prepare you for the top programs globally, right? That is the edge that ISBF gives students in the international context, especially. The same edge carries over into the master's application. This is where your question about career paths becomes very important. Our students have been able to go to LSE on full scholarship year after year after year. Harvard, Oxford, Yale, NYU, NUS, Chicago, Columbia, all of these global top 25, and I'm missing many names which are on our website, UCL, Paris School, etc., etc., etc. Again, the logic is the same. Anybody who sees that you've done 3 years of an LSE education thinks that you're prepared for their masters. They have no concern in terms of rigor of background, or they don't have to get into the question of अच्छा LSE, अच्छा what is LSE, इनका 70 का मतलब क्या है, is it good, is it bad, what kind of student do they give a 70% to. Everybody knows exactly what LSE stands for, and that is why our students get a massive edge when applying for a master's. And to just quickly drive that point home, since I brought up my own journey as a comparison point, when I applied after my undergrad for an LSE master's, I was actually rejected. But I was rejected for the 1-year master's, which is LSE's flagship program. I was made an offer for the 2-year master's, where in the first year I had to do the same courses that LSE undergrads were doing in their second year, which in other words is the same courses that ISBF undergrads are doing in their second year. So I had to actually go there and spend a lot of money doing 1 year of undergrad courses, and then get a 60% in order to progress to the masters. By comparison, an ISBF student, I've mentioned already, 2 students in the last 2 years have gone onto the 1-year program on full scholarship. So they've not only been accepted onto that program that I got rejected for, but on full scholarship, because their undergraduate foundation is considered good enough. I mean, it's among the best in the world, right? To take that story one step further, and this is the story not just of me, but of my roommate who was a Delhi University topper of our batch and All India ISC topper of our school batch. So arguably India's best applicant in that year for economics, if you consider DU as the best college or university. We also both applied to Cambridge University, and guess what Cambridge accepted us into? We got accepted into the transfer option. So after 3 years of our undergrad at DU, we were asked to do start from second year of undergrad at Cambridge. And Cambridge, mind you, is ranked lower than LSE. ISBF has students transferring to LSE second year after 1 year. We got an opportunity to transfer into Cambridge second year after 3 years. That is the chalk and cheese. So I'm giving you not just the careers, but also comparative perspective, of the chalk and cheese. And this goes back to the vision I was talking about. That this is why we are very passionate about bringing international higher education to India, because it just creates value of a different level, right? So anyway, that's the master's career path abroad. There's students have gone on to study at the best institutions in India, be it IIMs, ISB, XLRI in the management finance space, or Delhi School of Economics or ISI in the economics space. So there's that. I've already mentioned that we have a dedicated careers team which has placed students in eminent companies for years after upskilling them first, and students have gone on to work for companies like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Ernst & Young, KPMG, Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers. I may have mentioned PwC, Willis Towers Watson, actuarial science, JWT in advertising, PepsiCo and Walmart in the areas of marketing and operations. So that's the kind of career trajectory students have seen, and they've also actually been able to place students in for 1 year. This is a 1-year placement in London or New York with Fortune 500 firms like Morgan Stanley or UBS or Barclays or HSBC, where they go and do roles like investment banking for a year, which is a huge jumpstart at the start of your career. So those are the career options. One last and very important one I would bring up is entrepreneurship, because we're a business school. We're actually launching an incubation center this year, but we've always provided students with a lot of mentorship. One of our most famous entrepreneur alumni is Ritesh Agarwal, founder and CEO of Oyo Rooms. He dropped out, so we can't call him a graduate, but he's very much an alumnus of ISBF, and he holds the learning, whatever he had in his time at ISBF, quite dear. He gave up on some Ivy League options to come to ISBF, and then gained a lot, but dropped out because he had a business opportunity, and then we all know the rest of his story, don't we? So there is a lot of emphasis on entrepreneurship. Many others have followed in his footsteps with varying degrees of success. But early on in your career, it's about the learning more than the success. So that's another very important career path that students undertake. Now, coming to your question about placement statistics, 2000. So if I call the current batch, the batch of 2020, which is what they are, the batches of 17, 18 and 19, across our undergraduate and postgraduate programs, we saw 100% placements, which means that every single student who sat for placements was made at least one offer, in many cases multiple offers. And what was very encouraging for us was that most students took up those offers. 90% plus of them took up those offers because many students have a lot of their own personal networks or networks with their parents they try and leverage for a job. But they eventually took the ISBF job which suggests that we were able to get them very good jobs. 2020 is still a picture that's getting painted because their exams were delayed at LSE's end. We're already at about 60+% placements. So for a coronavirus year, that's not a bad number, and a number of other students we expect to be placed within the next 2-3 weeks as their results come out. We know that even in Indian universities results have been delayed so much, etc. So that's also happened a little bit at LSE to a lesser degree. So we expect the number to go up to cross 80% certainly in the next 2-3 weeks. This is on the back of 3 years of 100% placements, as I said. In terms of the answer to your last question about packages, so if I paint an overall picture between the undergrads and the postgrads, or let me paint a separate picture because they're completely separate categories of students. The average package for undergraduate students is 5 to 5.5 lakhs per annum. The average package for postgraduate students, which is after the 1-year graduate diploma, is about 6.5 lakhs per annum. And the highest package, to my knowledge, this is one that I don't have an answer to off the bat. I might be wrong, but is about 10.5 lakhs or so in the past 2-3 years. So this is without taking into consideration the 1-year foreign placements, because there they get paid in pounds or dollars and they earn much more. But I wouldn't, because that's a 1-year role, I'm not factoring that into the average or the maximum package. But purely for domestic placements, those are the numbers.
In pounds or something that would go beyond big numbers.
Absolutely.
2,000 pounds, 3,000 pounds means a lot in
India.
As engaging and enlightening this conversation has been, and it is quite unfortunate that due to this interview time limit, we have to take this conversation to a close. Otherwise, I think I could have spent the entire day talking to you. Honestly,
it was lovely talking to you. If you do want to go on for another 5-10 minutes, I can squeeze that in. But by 12:15 latest, I'll have to go. I don't know your time constraints, but happy to draw this to a close if you have to add something.
No, there's one more last question we would want you to answer. So that is
one. Please.
This is something where I want you to part your knowledge with the students, and we are all scared. We are very much scared and uncertain. There's so much anxiety in the air, and we require. Let us say need of the hour, as you said, there's digital education and everything. But I feel the biggest need of the hour are leaders like you, and leaders like you would make sure that this air of anxiety, these things are not there, and you can guide a lot of students to perfect their career goals and education path. Right. So in terms of that, if I can look at the entire scenario with the economic slowdown as it is, the passing batch would be entering a tough job market. So any advice to all the students?
Right. Very good question, Indranil. You placed a huge responsibility on my shoulders. I think many others are doing much better job, I'm sure. But yeah, happy to do my bit and share my views with the students if that helps. There's a lot to be said, Indranil, to be honest. I'll try and be as concise as I can. And in such a situation, one must take a view. It's no point saying, "Acha, kuch bhi ho sakta hai." You have to, going back to one of your earlier questions, you have to strategize based on a certain view of the future, as you see it with the best of your ability and knowledge. And the way we see it, and we've spoken about this a lot at ISBF, the director, myself, the dean, course leaders, who lead various disciplines. We firmly believe that the post-pandemic world, whenever the vaccine arrives, and a few months after that, the post-pandemic world will see a much flatter job market. I mentioned that an event like this takes you and shakes you, and I think one of the shakes to the world of work has been the possibility of working remotely. A lot of in India we are predominantly an SME economy, small and medium enterprises economy. SMEs have often been very reluctant to explore things like work from home, etc. They are more like come to the office, work 9 to 5, 9 to 6, etc. Which for the current generation, especially the generations graduating, honestly, even to some extent for my generation, but certainly for the generations graduating now, is a shackle. If you see the latest employment surveys, most students, in some cases going up to 80%, don't want a permanent job. They want a freelance kind of role. They want to be part of the gig economy, right? Where this reporting to work, coming to office 9 to 5 is a huge constraint. And I think the pandemic has forced SMEs, it's shaken them a little bit, and shown them that, I can tell you that, ISBF has unlocked new levels of productivity during the pandemic, because people have just risen to the occasion. They've taken responsibility and risen to the occasion. Now, coming back to your specific question, what I'm trying to say is that, we've already seen a global giant like Twitter declare work from home permanently for the foreseeable future, right? What that means is, now if Twitter has to hire somebody, if the person is working from home, why would they care whether home is New Orleans or New York or New Delhi? Yeah. And that opens up a whole new world of opportunities, because if you have the right talent, the right substance, and also the right signals, global brands on your CV, which usually stand for depth of substance also, then you can look forward to a career anywhere in the world, working with the top companies at their headquarters, or at least part of the HQ team, without being in the HQ city. So I think the time has come. We were anyway moving towards a world of specialists. That has been a very clear trend. In my father's generation, doing a bachelor's was enough to differentiate yourself. In my generation, doing a master's was typically enough to differentiate yourself. Today, you must go on and do a PhD if you truly want to be termed a specialist. So it's increasingly a world of specialists. What the pandemic will do is change the areas in which specialists are more in demand. But it is no doubt going to be a world of specialists. So the advice to the young minds out there is, make sure, this is going to seem a bit tangential given what I've just said, but I want to add one more thing into the mix. When we say a world of specialists, it means you have to become an expert, or you should try to become an expert. I'm not trying to kind of put undue pressure on anybody, but you have to become an expert at something in life to be able to contribute deeply. One thumb rule says you become an expert if you do something for 10,000 hours. Now just break that down for yourself. 10,000 hours at the moment, do you do anything for 3 hours in a day, every single day? It's unlikely. Most of us don't, right? If you did something for 3 hours every single day without any weekends, you would do about 1,000 hours in a year. Going on for 10 years, then you would become an expert. Without weekends, 3 hours a day. Anyway, that's just one thumb rule. The point I'm trying to make is, it's a long journey to becoming an expert, right? And what you need on a long journey is intrinsic motivation. Papa ke dhakke se, ya mummy ke dhakke se, ya teacher ke dhakke se, you can only go so far. That is called extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation comes from a love for something. The first question that Indranil sir asked me about, my love for education, for example, right? And that is why spend a lot of time. You have a lot of information available to you, young kids out there. Spend a lot of time trying to sift through that intelligently and make a very informed choice about your undergraduate program, because that is where your journey to become an expert starts. Think very discerningly with a lot of information, and make sure you find a good fit for who you are, for your interests and skills, your aspirations. Because like we said, we are moving towards a world of experts. We are also moving towards a world where the job market will be flatter, most likely. Recruitments will be from anywhere for anywhere, which means global brands will play a bigger role than ever before. Now, if you can imagine, if a Twitter HR is looking at a CV and sees LSE on your CV, that will immediately mark you out as a very strong candidate in the sort of top league of candidates, and so on. So those are the kind of things to think about, Indranil. I don't want to leave them with too many insights, but I think those are a couple of useful pieces of advice. I would think that, find a good fit that sets you off on the journey to becoming an expert. And we believe strongly that the time has come for, substance over signal, where global brands will therefore, become disproportionately important.
I think after your explanations, I would rather say I'm looking forward to a lot of things. You made me look forward to a lot of things, even my own career aspect, whatever it is. So that is something I feel like an interview should mean, and I feel like I'm a better person even with this interaction. So I would say thank you.
You're being too kind, Indranil.
I mean, it is not my job, but I'm being honest over here. Anywho, so we shall conclude the interview, and thank you so much for giving us your time and entertaining our questions. No matter how valid and long it was.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
And to the viewers, if you want to know more about ISBF, you can check out the website. And currently, if you're watching through the microsite, you can check out the other panels to have more details, and you also get in touch with the colleges to get more additional details. Thank you so much.